won't be able to actually see the chat, so that'll be fun. Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first log for December 2024. This year has literally flown by. Towards the end, for those of you who stick around, we will have a discussion amongst us about how we want to handle the second one for this month, whether or not we want to cancel it or do another one. I haven't decided yet, so I thought I'd take input from the group, and we can kind of figure out how we want to do the second one. Because if we do the normal time, I'm pretty sure it ends up like on Christmas or like really close. So obviously that won't work. Yes, YouTube, I know I'm live. Thank you for telling me. And anyway, so welcome for those of you watching live or afterwards, welcome. This is a Linux user group. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically a group of people who get together and talk about Linux. We're a bunch of nerds. We're going to nerd out for the next couple hours. We have a topic to discuss. If you want to join us today, there's a link. I shared it in the video description. I also shared it on Discord, and I shared it on Mastodon, so you can join if you want. If you can't join us this time, we do this twice a month, so you can join the Discord and find out the dates for when we do that. It's usually the second Thursday and the fourth Thursday. Holidays are going to mess around with that a little bit, but if you want to join in the future, you can do so. So, housekeeping out of the way, and I'm actually going to make everybody else go away. You guys are going to see what we're going to do this time. We're going to do a tier list, if I can actually, get this where it needs to go. So I knew I would immediately forget where I put everything on my desktop. So if you guys forgive me, I have no clue where I'm going. There we go. All right. I was like, I remember what workspace I was on. I remembered what workspace I was on. I didn't remember. All right. Now I have no clue where OBS went. So I have no clue what OBS is doing. That's fine. It's somewhere. I'm sure it's going to be great. Anyway, so we are going to be doing a tier list, and I'm going to try to share this amongst my friends here as well. We'll see how that goes. I'm not convinced that it's going to do well, but we will find out. So I don't know if you guys can all actually see that. Thumbs up, someone with the camera, thumbs up for me if you can see my screen. Excellent. All right, so basically what we're going to do is we're going to do a tier list of window managers and desktop environments. So the way this is going to work, we're going to create this kind of like a direct democracy. You guys will nominate where you want one to go. So whoever wants to nominate first can raise their hand, and then we will discuss it, and then we will vote. The majority wins. If we don't have a majority, I will serve as tiebreaker. And obviously, no mean-spirited things. If yours ends up in the D class, and you don't agree with that, you can either rage quit or be silent about it. So there you go. So who wants to nominate one first? It doesn't have to be one that I have a logo of. If I don't have a logo for it, I'll try to make a logo or go get a logo or something. I tried to get as much as I could, but I didn't prepare as well as I could have. So who wants to nominate one first? Raise your hand. Let's see. D-Dubs, you managed to get in first. Go ahead.
Actually, might surprise you, DWM.
Okay, that is a surprise. So, those of you who raised your hand, that means you're going to get to tell me where it goes first. So, Steve, where do you think DWM should go?
It should go in B tier.
B tier. Are you going to give us some, reasons why? Are you going to?
I was going to.
Go ahead.
The reason I give it a B tier, not an A or an S, is because it's a good window manager, but it requires a bit of messing about to get it the way you want. And I'm thinking about new users. I'm not talking about the nerds out there. If a new user wants to use DWM, it's not straightforward. It's not as difficult as the likes of Hyperland or anything like that. It's much simpler, but not simple enough. But it's really, really, really good. One of the good window managers, and I think D-Dubs and Drew would agree with me that it's a really good one. But it's and since it's Xorg only, for those who want to benefit from Wayland, so it lacks a few things. So it should go in B tier.
Okay. Nate, you have an argument?
I actually do. I think it should be either S or A tier. And the reason why, mostly because I'm not thinking of it as a new user. I'm thinking of it most of the time, if you're using tiling window managers, you're kind of a Linux nerd, to be honest. And when it comes to actually thinking around with your system, I think DWM, I would put it in a solid A+, actually, is where I would put it.
Okay. For those of you who are watching on the stream, I don't know what's going on with that. It's not sharing my screen. Imagine the shock and surprise that you guys aren't actually gonna be able to see this. So let me move. D-Dubs, why don't you go ahead and go, and I will mess around and see what's going on with the screen sharing.
Yeah, because I was one of the reasons that I nominated it, and I do believe it should be in that upper class. I don't particularly look at necessarily the quality. Is it good for a new user or not, or whatever? Just as empirical as possible. What are its qualities? Speed, simplicity, the fact that it's been used as the base for so many other window managers. The list is quite extensive. So that's why that's why one of the reasons that I nominated it. It's only Xorg, okay, but that's not necessarily a bad thing at this point.
Can you do me a favor and tell me again what level you thought it was? I'm
gonna say an A.
Okay. All right. Drew, go ahead.
I wanted to know if you wanted me to just put something in the poll just so that we can kind of vote in the I'll remove it if you want, but basically
yeah, that's a good idea, Drew.
Like this, dude. I don't know if you're looking at the poll real quick.
In the chat in the.
Well, I haven't done it yet. There we go.
Yeah, that's a good idea, and I will leave you to monitor that for me so that
that's cool.
I can.
That's cool. Yeah, I'll take care of that. So
Okay.
As far as DWM is concerned, I'm a shill, and I'm I'm going to put it in S tier. Now, do I recognize that it has limitations? Well, to Steve's point, 100% not for new users. 100% not for a new user, and only for somebody who wants to actually do some patching. And because, like we talked about a little bit on the podcast, you can use DWM directly out of the box and just go with it, but you don't want to. You really want to add some patches to make it more functional. You want to either use a DWM blocks or an SL status if you want a pretty status bar. So some of these things are drawbacks, but when it comes to pure like speed and its ability to get your work done, it's an S. If you're asking me if it's for everybody, no, it's not.
Okay, so anybody else have any arguments for where DWM should go, or should we end the poll? Okay, so Drew, where's the poll at as of now?
Right now, there's only 7 people that have voted. It's 1 S, and actually we're at 8 now. So 1 S, 4 A, and 3 Bs.
So it looks like A won there, right?
Yep.
Okay. Then that's where we'll go. So let's see if this actually is going to work. There we go. Cool. All right. So who wants to put in the next nomination? Nate, go ahead. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Are we just doing tiling?
No, window managers too.
Okay. I'm actually going to nominate Cosmic.
Okay. Find me a logo. We'll figure that out. All right. So give us. I'll probably go ahead and let the nomination. So I didn't do this with you, D-Dubs. I'm sorry about them. Disorganized as usual. Nate, why don't you go ahead and give your argument about why?
The simple fact that it's actually built from the ground up with Wayland in mind. Also, that it's so easy to switch between tiling and just a regular floating desktop manager. Also, the improvements that they have made on it in the past few months have been leaps and bounds ahead of. I hate to say it because so many people is going to hate me when I say it, but I still think it's more stable than KDE ever thought about trying to be, and it's really good. I have really enjoyed it. It still has a few bugs, but the System 76 devs have been absolutely going through the GitHub and trying to make sure everything is being addressed. So I think personally, I think it should be. I don't think it's a S tier. I think it's either in an A or B tier.
Okay, Steve, go ahead. Your
yeah,
argument for Cosmic.
yeah, Cosmic. Yeah, I wanna, since I have been testing Cosmic since before coming to Serbia. It's still on my laptop. It's still running strong, but if I look at it the way Nate looked at it, yes, I give it either an A or a B, because of the tremendous work that's being done from the ground up, and because of it, the ease of switching. It is the desktop environment that made me appreciate tiling window managers a little bit more, to tolerate them more. From that aspect, it's an A, but from another aspect, it's a B, because it's currently in alpha. So, and the issues, there have been issues that have existed since day one, and they have been working on it for what, a year plus, and still they didn't address those issues, and those issues are big ones. Like, you cannot run TUI applications from the app launcher. You cannot shift delete applications. You cannot, and the file manager is all sorts of incomplete. They keep updating it. Today there were updates, at least to the Git branch, since that's what I'm running on Arch. Still, nothing is being. None of the big issues have been addressed yet. Even the user information in settings is not. It has existed since day one, and they haven't addressed it yet. But otherwise, overall, I would give it an A, because it's a really good desktop environment with amazing tiling capabilities and super user friendly by extension.
Okay, Riggs, go ahead. Make sure unmute yourself. Looks like he went away.
Press the wrong button.
Okay,
Can you hear me
there
now?
go. Yeah.
Yeah, I opened the chat instead. Yeah, I tried Cosmic back in Alpha 1 and Alpha 2. Obviously, it's not finished yet, but like, it's an alpha, you know that going into it, and I'm not so sure where it is now, but when it's finished, I think it will be S. Great way to get people who haven't tried tiling before to try it out, because it's just on a toggle and you've not got to redo everything. Just apart from like alpha bugs, in general, things just work. Universal theming, which I don't think they have yet, but last I looked was coming. So you don't need to have a separate program for theming GTK and Qt stuff. It was just brilliant. I think when it's finished, it might be S, but it is still alpha at the minute, obviously. So
Okay, D-Dubs, go ahead.
Yeah, only because it's not feature complete. I have a real tough time giving it such high marks. It's, I think it will be when it is done, but like I say, even some of the user groups things, a few other things I've run into. So I'm having a tough time pushing it much more than a B.
Okay, anybody else want to do an argument? Nate, go ahead. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm just going to tell you that in Discord, I did send you the Cosmic logo.
Okay, I just found a random picture of planets. We'll just use that.
Okay, whatever you want to. But to the counter argument, I do agree with D-Dubs that it's not fully feature rich yet, but I still believe that it's at least a or B, just for the simple fact that for what they have done and the way that it functions, it's so much better. And I'll be honest with you, it's so much better than KDE to me.
Okay. Drew, go ahead.
I'm just giving you a report. The C is the leader on the poll right now within the group, within this group.
Okay. I am putting polls up in the YouTube chat, but you guys don't actually get a vote. If you want to vote, you have to come join the call. So that may seem unfair to you, but you get a vote, but it doesn't count. But anyways, A is winning in YouTube, but so you said C in
C's got 38% of the vote here.
All right. RBM, do you want to go ahead and?
It's actually tied now.
Okay.
Between B and C.
We need more argument. RBM, go ahead.
So first of all, I just want to clarify what exactly we're ranking these on, because it's been very unclear whether we care about their capabilities as window managers or whether we care about their capabilities as whole desktop environments.
Well, we're doing both, by the way. So we're ranking everything, but they're not really ranked against each other. They're ranked against the tier that they're on. So S tier is obviously the best, D tier is obviously the worst, and then the stuff in the middle, right? So let's say for example, Budgie. We decided Budgie was also an A. Just randomly out of thing. We're not comparing that against other A's. We're just comparing it against the, where we think that it ranks in the thing. I think that that's probably the best way to do it. You can't really compare all of these together. So I think,
okay.
Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I don't think you can compare them all together either. That wouldn't make any sense. They're so different. But I think as far as Cosmic goes, I do believe that it will one day be a high A tier. But being an entire desktop environment, it can never be fully capable of achieving S tier, because I think S tier for me is reserved for really like personalized environments. And I don't think Cosmic is ever going to give you a truly fully personalized environment. Like as far as theming goes, for example, they're not really supporting full theming. They're really just letting you generate color schemes and stuff.
Well, basically, what they're trying to do is do more than GNOME allows you to do, right?
Yeah, but it's not going to be as much as KDE for sure. But it's going to be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
But like I said, like you won't ever get a fully personalized environment. You can't tweak every little tiny setting to your perfect like needs. So I don't think it'll ever qualify for a full S tier from my end. But I think at its state right now, I think it actually qualifies for a pretty strong B tier, being even in alpha, just because the ease of going back and forth between tiling and non-tiling, a lot of integration with all of their own new software that they're creating a whole environment out of. It's Wayland first and only, and the tiling experience is actually pretty magical. How they've made it work with the zone previews and almost complete mouse compatibility as well. I think that's going to be great. So I think eventually it's going to be like a top A tier. But right now, I think it's still B.
I'm sorry. Alexei in the chat says it's the point of DE's personalization, though, and you can tell that's the perspective of a GNOME user.
Oh, yeah. No, I 100% agree. You're not supposed to fully customize it. But that's why I think that it will never fully, in my opinion, be an S tier environment, because it can't be truly fully customized, to your actual specifications. You will hit those limits eventually.
Okay. Nate, go ahead.
Get a quick question. When we're doing these polls, are you just looking at what is the most, because are we putting in the fact that B, A, and S are also done as well? Because if that was the case, then technically it would still just be a B.
Well,
if we wrap all of them together.
Whoever has the most votes that's where it's going to go.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like they're tied right now for between B and C. So, but S has 2 and A has 1. So how do you?
Well, no. If there's,
I voted for B, so it's going to go B. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. If there's a tie, I will break the tie. But we're not quite done yet. D-Dubs, you have something to say? Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Only that I don't know that we necessarily know ultimately what the theming capabilities of Cosmic is going to be, and or what other people do create projects for it. I'll give Steve a little shout out. I mean, you look at what he's done with his kit that's not included by default in KDE. So, and that's part of the reasons that I don't give it the higher tier, is because we don't know ultimately what's going to be available when it becomes generally available, when it hits GA.
Yeah, it's definitely still alpha. Des, go ahead.
I think it's C tier still because we don't know what it will become. And I don't quite like its customizability as much as I like some of the other things like KDE and Cinnamon and some of the other ones.
Okay. Parking meter, go ahead.
Hey, so, it's hard to, make an argument here since I haven't personally used Cosmic yet. But one of the reasons why I haven't is, paying attention to the types of alpha bugs that exist today. I would be super frustrated, right? Going through either a desktop environment or a window manager in it getting, in my way, and then not being able to fix it. Right. That's why I like, the other systems with more customization, right? If I break it, I can fix it. But, with these alpha bugs, you get to sit on your hands and wait for somebody else to fix it. So to me, that would just, it would be that like window switch moment, right? When I can't complete something. And so I'm not even willing to try and, use it in a production environment yet. And so why, I can't vote above C for a system like that in that state. So.
Okay. Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I was having some chocolate. Well, there's when it comes to customizing Cosmic, there's cosmicthemes.org, and that part is amazes me to this day, because theming Cosmic, and I'm talking Cosmic as in Cosmic applications as well, is so damn easy. You just download an RMB or not RMB. I'm thinking of URMB, but some sort of a file extension. It's a single file. You go to Appearance, import, done. Your whole entire system is themed. All the Cosmic applications are themed. All you need, all that's left is an icon theme, and there's an icon theme selector in the settings. This is when it comes to Cosmic itself. Now, when it comes to libadwaita apps or KDE apps or GTK app, GTK3 apps, this goes above and beyond Cosmic's ability, because they are not GTK, they are not Qt, they are their own Rust from the ground up. So we cannot judge Cosmic on the lack of the ability of theming those specific apps that are non-Cosmic. So when it comes to customizing Cosmic itself and Cosmic apps, it's so damn easy. It's much easier than KDE. It's much easier than GTK or libadwaita. So kudos to whoever is working on that. And the good news is, when Brody talked to the lead dev, he assured everyone that they're working on GTK compatibility and theming and Qt theming. Qt being the last one they're going to target, but GTK3 and libadwaita they're working on. It's coming. So, and one thing he ended the discussion with was, don't worry about customization. Cosmic is going to be one of the easiest desktop environments to customize. So we cannot judge it on what it is now. We have to judge it on what it's going to become in the future. If you want to judge it now, it's in B or C tier. But if you want to judge it of what it will become, it's A tier.
Drew?
Yeah, I'm actually in agreement with Steve, and that doesn't happen every day. But I look at it in terms of where it is right now. And to be honest with you, the fact that where they are is really, really, it's unbelievable what they've done up until this point. By the way, the B tier has taken the lead in the poll. But when you think about Cosmic, the potential there is unbelievable. I think and and when KDE and GNOME are in the same kind of like, you know, in the same space, Cosmic at some point may be the best of the bunch. And we don't know that based on what we currently have to look at, but it very well could be that kind of level.
Okay. Anybody else have any other arguments before we take the final count? Going once, twice. All right, Drew, who won?
B1.
B1. Okay, we're going with B. And someone else mentioned in the YouTube chat, well, what's kind of, it's because I can't give you guys all the options. I can only give you 4 options, and there's 5 categories. So, sorry about that. All right, so Cosmic is going to be. All right, Steve, our next nomination, please. I have a feeling I know what this is.
Hyperland.
Oh, he surprised me. I'm shocked.
That was the point, because I knew you're going to think KDE.
I figured it would go in Plasma. All right, tell us where you think Hyperland should be.
Hyperland should be A or S tier. That's another surprise. I'm lowballing you, but it should be A or S tier because it is bar none the best window manager, Wayland window manager, compositor out there. Bar none. Customizability unlimited, limitless. Imagination limitless. There's nothing you cannot do with Hyperland. I will never use it, but that doesn't stop me from giving it high praise, because I've been watching it evolve from behind the scenes, and I'm not going to judge it on the developer. The developer is the developer. He's entitled to his opinions, but as an end result, it is the best tiling window manager I've ever seen, and I think will ever see in a long time. So I'll give it A or S tier. For me, it's S tier when it comes to window managers.
Okay. Riggs, go ahead. We can't hear you, Riggs.
How about now?
Yep.
Okay, we'll do one of these without problems one day.
Probably not.
It's got to be S. Well, yeah, true. Got to be S. Hyperland, absolutely beautiful. The animations you can put on it, gradient board, it just looks fantastic. Really easy to configure. I don't really have anything bad to say about it, apart from the cringy anime girl background wallpaper that comes by default, but you can get rid of that really easily. So, like, the only downside I have is like a 10-second fix. Apart from that, I love it.
Okay. RBM, go ahead.
So Hyperland is such an interesting one because it's so fast-paced and so flashy. I think it's incredible what you can do with Hyperland and how cool everything is in it. But that configuration is an absolute nightmare. It's a complete disaster, and it needs to be redone from scratch all over again. It is such a mess and impossible to work with. But as far as its capabilities go, I love that they have done their own Wayland, I forget what it's called, the back end, to replace WL Roots for themselves. And I hope to see that project take off. I'm actually more excited about that than Hyperland itself. So for me, it's really actually still going to be like a B tier. I'd like to give it A, but I think it needs to hit like a 1.0 before it's allowed to go above a B tier for me.
Okay. D-Dubs, go ahead.
Well, you know I'm gonna vote for it, but probably surprisingly enough, I kind of agree that where it stands today, it's kind of that A or B tier. To give a little bit of update, there are some GUIs being developed that use the HyperCTL to manage all the settings, and you can also do them live. there's a couple of apps out already, so that config file isn't really an issue. And most people actually break up the config file anyway to make it more manageable. But my only downside, and I'm a Hyperland guy, as everybody knows, my only downside is there's been so much churn lately that I'm a little concerned about where it's going to go long term. Yes, there's Aquamarine, which is great, but now you have all these other projects, and I almost like I'm worried they're going to lose a little bit of focus on the quality, because there've already been a number of really bad gotcha issues. So yeah, I'm going to give it an A just because, but that's kind of pushing it where it stands today.
Okay.
Only because I'm concerned about where it's going to go.
Yeah, I agree with you. Nate, go ahead.
So I'm actually going to give it a B. And the reason why is because the same reason that when they look at Cosmic, it's in alpha. I still consider Hyperland in alpha as well. And it is very buggy to me. I don't know why. And I don't have the bugginess that, I know it's not the same, but I still don't have the bugginess that is in Hyperland that Cosmic doesn't have with Wayland. And so I wanted to give it a higher one because I really like the looks of it, but I can't. To me, it's still alpha. It's still too buggy. I've had it break on me several times, so I'm going to give it a B.
Okay. Des, go ahead.
I'm going to give it an A, not S, because it's too fast paced, but I'm going to give it an A because what they've got is pretty customizable.
Okay. RBM, go ahead.
Yeah, the Hyper CTL and all the configuration stuff that you can do through that, I do think that is going to be really great for other users, but it will never work for me. I mean, just for quickly testing something, maybe, but like for me personally, which is what I'm mostly basing most of my rankings on here, is it's just not going to do it. It needs to be like the syntax of the actual configuration needs to be solved. It's just such a disaster. And totally inconsistent all over the place. But I do think that it can definitely reach up towards S tier as a standalone window manager because Vaxery has built so many additional tools and little trinkets and stuff to go with it to make it like really feel a lot more like its own ecosystem. But I also think that that's part of a drawback. You kind of feel like you need to live inside the Hyperland ecosystem as a whole if you run the window manager, which of course is not necessarily true, but it's really going to solve a lot of problems up front for you if you do that. And then I think that's going to detract from like its overall appeal to some of the more advanced users. But I do think that it'll definitely be a strong A tier for general like tiling window manager users if with the extra configuration utilities and all the other tools that they make available. I think it's going to be great, really, really great one day, but definitely it needs to slow down and get to some kind of 1.0-ish before it can get to that A and S tier feeling.
Okay. I'm going to jump in before I let anybody else go because I have a couple of arguments that I want to make. I would label this as C tier, not because it's not good, but because of the general vibes around it. And this comes to something that D-Dub said, he's just worried about where it's going to go. And that's my chief concern. Like, it feels like at any moment Vaxery would, because he literally has full control over the project, right? Anything he says and wants to do, he can do. And that's fine because it's his project. He started it. It's the way that it should be. Vim was like that for literal decades. And, it worked out fine. But he feels, and this is a judgment on my part for sure, it feels like at any given moment he could just decide to change his mind and rewrite something mission critical off from the ground up, like just completely change everything, and then he would just push that, and then everybody would get that, and it would break. Qtile was like this for a long time, where they decided to break the bar every single release, and it made Qtile almost impossible to actually use for any period of time, because you never knew when an update was going to come down, and it would just break everything, and it just wouldn't load. Now they fixed that because they made it easier for your configuration in Qtile to run with errors, and I think Hyperland has that feature as well. But still, the idea that he could just completely decide to rebuild something or change something mission critical and not have any roadblocks to that, is a little worrying. So I would rank it quite low, despite the fact that I really like it. So Riggs, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm really curious what people's issue is with the config file, because I genuinely found it like ridiculously easy to work with. Just you open the Hyperland wiki, it's okay, here's all the options, here's the possible values. It was a really easy config to work with for me. But with the Vaxtree stuff, I think the bigger drawback is more just that like he needs to get somebody else working on it with him, because it is just one guy working on a massive project. I'm less worried about him breaking something and more worried about him burning out. Like somebody has to get on there to help.
Makes sense. D-Dubs, go ahead.
First of all, he does have help. There are several other devs, and what Matt said, I definitely agree with. Is there are some concerns about the direction, because he does drop new things all the time and rewrites things. So as far as the config file goes, part of the problem is with all the changes, the documentation is already starting to lag. And that's a problem, for people adopting it. And there are inconsistencies in the syntax of the config file, 100%. Like I said, they just totally changed shadow, and they go, yeah, we're not doing shadow that way anymore. We're going to do it this way. I will say it is better than a lot of other window managers about handling errors. You get an annoying message, with a red banner on top, but it points out exactly where the problem is, so that's a good thing. And I think long-term it will serve it very, very well. But yeah, again, as you said, Matt said, you sort of don't know what he's going to do. Sway is very similar, because Sway was written by one guy and he literally held sway over it. Now it's developed and there's more people doing it. So I think the outlook is excellent, but I have a tough time, like I say, giving it not as low as a C, but a B is kind of where it's at the moment compared to the other ones.
Okay, RBM, go ahead.
Thank you. I definitely think that I have to agree about the future and direction of Hyperland. And the pace of development and just throwing like new like applications and tools and utilities and stuff into the ecosystem, and then like there's just such a huge maintenance burden all the time. Like it definitely feels like the direction of Hyperland is going to need to like maybe focus in and narrow down a little bit one day. But I don't want to belabor the point about the configuration and stuff. I don't actually have a problem using the configuration myself. And reading the documentation to apply new changes and everything. That's not an issue that I personally have. It's just the fact that I can tell by like from what the configuration, just the syntax alone, the effort to make it feel kind of plain texty for regular average Joe users who aren't comfortable with like a specific like domain specific language kind of syntax. I think Hyperland needs to go ahead and be more of a domain-specific language for its config instead of trying to be kind of like a plain texty kind of feel. Like it's just not going to be a good future for working with. But that, of course, may go away because those other utilities and stuff and hyperctl and everything, you can probably just do it all eventually through a bash script with hyperctl, for example. But like i3 never got there. Like with i3 message, which is, for JSON output and ways to communicate with the window manager. Like, it never got those tools. It never got those utilities. You still use a pretty lame config file with some pretty lame syntax. And I don't think Hyperland is going to improve on that.
I think, okay, so I'm going to say something that's probably going to piss you off, but I think you're being a little elitist. Just because I don't think that everyone wants to configure something that is in a language, right? I think that i3 has a lot of benefits for being in plain text. But I do agree that you could do more in something simple like Bash. Because like if you're with BSPWM, you can do that in any language that you want, but shell is the default. By having it as a shell script and using BSPC BSP? It's been so long since I've used BSPM, but there's that their tool in just a regular Bash file. You can basically do whatever you want. You can script it, you can put in functions, whatever you want. So maybe that's a middle ground between which you seem to have a problem with and having it be like written in C, like DWM, right? So, nobody wants Haskell to be the new default for Hyperland. I mean, that'd just be. I mean, I know Darth Vader's in the chat, but nobody likes Haskell.
Yeah. Okay. Well, just to I do want to clarify that I did say that I think that HyperCTL will bridge that gap more or less. By allowing you to eventually, probably, you will be able to do everything you need to do through HyperCTL. So you could just bash script practically anything or use any language, right? I think we'll get there kind of eventually, but actual tools and utilities built on that for end users, I don't think those are going to crop up. And that's why I have a problem with the config file and the syntax. I don't mean to be elitist about it. That's not my goal. I think the config file is bad for the plain text users as well. I don't think it's good in that case, but I could be wrong about it.
The way it is right now, you're right, because there's still a lot of squirrely brackets in there. So it's kind of like a midway, like they haven't finished. Like the stuff in the middle of the brackets is plain text, but you still have to have those brackets, and you got to have, So, but at least it doesn't yell at you about commas, I don't think. So, Fraggle, go ahead. There you go.
Owner, okay. I'm kind of on mobile hotspot right now, but I kind of agree with what D-Dub said earlier and everything like that. But also I don't know. I mean, I've been running Hyperland for a very long time. I don't think I've ever really had a problem with the config or anything like that. When things update or change, you're notified very well and very verbose. How to correct those errors and everything like that too. Again, most recently with shadows and the way those are handled in the config. And I think that the config can be very simple and straightforward in a single file, but it can also call individual config files. So you can have your keybinds in an individual file that's called by the main config. You can have your animations and shadows and all your decorations and everything called in a separate file too. So you can break it down into individual files if that's your thing, or you can just have it in one long file. Again, with hypercontrol and stuff like that, there's a lot that you can do through even bash scripting and include that in your config. I don't know. I mean, I've never really had any issues with Hyperland that a lot of other people seem to have. And I found it extremely straightforward and easy to use and easy to config. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's one of the, I think you had mentioned it the other day, Matt, it's one of the only real viable Wayland compositors right now as well, as far as a TWM goes.
That's just depressing.
Or similar to TWM. So it's a beautiful thing. I love it. And I think it's A, if not S tier, for me anyway.
Okay.
But,
Riggs, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the problem that you can have with plain text config is just it being too limiting and not being able to do as much stuff as you can with using a full language. But Hyperland has never had that problem to me. Yeah, it's all plain text, but it's there's enough in there that you don't really end up in that situation where you can't do something because of how the config file works. And with the with the stuff that changes, there's a thing on the wiki, the docs for it, where you can there's a drop down where you can basically pin the docs to whatever version you're on, so that like these changes aren't an issue for you. Because like, okay, some things have changed in the Git, and I'm still on 45. Just set the docs to 45, and it'll give you all the right options. So like, yeah, it changes a lot because it's still early development, but I think it deals with it in about as good of a way as you can, really.
Okay. D-Dubs, go ahead.
Yeah, just to wrap up on the config thing, because I understand totally what RBM is saying, because going forward, having to edit text files isn't a good method of configuration for anything. I mean, it's one of the things that kind of held DWM back. There were actually some projects that put that into a GUI, so you didn't have to go and bring up your editor and make sure the syntax was correct and then compile it and then install it. Hyperland, in order to me to achieve an S tier kind of class, has to have that. I don't need to go to the CLI to manage things. I should have a nice GUI, and not all the pieces are there. And the uncertainty that we've talked about as to how he's going to handle that. Where is he, if he had in fact built, you know, I hope it wouldn't be like Lua or something, but or JSON or something, but a structure that would be very easy then to write a program to manage, run syntax, be able to deal with revision changes, for example. You know, when shadow changes and so forth. Well, if it's part of the spec, it's a lot easier to manage that and migrate it. Look at the configuration, say, oh, I need to migrate to this. Alacrity is a great example of that. Yes, they changed their settings a couple of times, but they gave you a migrate facility to just go ahead and fix that for you. That's what computers are good for. So that's why I think long term it is an issue the way the configuration file is being handled today. And that's all I got.
Okay. Nate, go ahead.
I'm actually going to vote for that. We just move on because we've done beat this topic to death.
You're the last one. All right. So, anybody else have real quick last one they want to say, or are we done? Okay, Drew. Who won?
4S, 3A, and 5B.
So B.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Where is that? There we go. All right. In the YouTube chat, it looks like A1. Okay. All right. So who has a nomination for me? Who are we going next? Nate, go ahead. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Oh, let's just get it out of the way. KDE.
All right. Plasma it is. So who wants to argue for where it goes? Steve, go ahead.
I'm going to surprise you again. It's going to go into C tier. Because my argument is Plasma 6 is not as stable as they promised. Not yet, at least. I have to deal but it redeems itself in where most of the issues that have come so far in Plasma 6, I was able to bypass or fix one way or the other and ship XeroLinux with fixed config files and ship them in XeroLinux. But given the fact that not every user is going to be downloading XeroLinux and they'll be experiencing KDE as it's installed from Arch Vanilla, from that point of view, yes, it's a C tier because although it's awesome to configure, easy to configure, fun to play around with, and everything, but users are going to end up pulling their hair off with all the bugginess that happens. Like, I'll give you an example of a recent bug that I encountered. Is dialog boxes are not notifications, basically. Not dialog boxes. Notifications are not evenly sized per app across the system or system-wide. They're per app So some apps give you a completely messed up notification, whereas system apps give you a very good looking, not broken notification. You got icons that disappear. You got, when you right click proper to check, or alt enter or control enter to see the properties of a folder. For whatever reason, Dolphin closes and reopens in a random position on the screen. All these kind of things, and try as we might reporting them on the KDE Bugzilla, they either go unanswered, or the thread just gets really negative replies. So I am not, although I fight and will forever fight for KDE, I still am realistic as to when it comes to its bugs, and I must admit they're not compiling. What did they say? They're compounding, and it's becoming really annoying these days. So I'm sorry, but I have to put it in C tier.
Okay. D-Dubs, go ahead.
Might surprise you, but I'm going to give it an A. Yep, there's a lot of problems. I'm not just judging it on Plasma. I look at its customizability. For me, it's been pretty stable when I have used it. I also look at what other people have done with it, whether it's Garuda, which you either love or you hate. Zero Linux has been a good example of what it is capable of compared to, say, a GNOME or some of the other ones out there. I think it deserves its A.
Okay. RBM, go ahead.
Wow. I think that KDE is an incredible project, but I think the actual usability of KDE, and this is definitely because I'm a little bit like wired into the power user stuff and the advanced tiling stuff, but I do think that the overall usability of KDE, despite all of its other impressive features, is closer to a D tier, just because I think that the project umbrella is too wide, and they need to narrow down and focus in so that they can actually really truly address the scope of the project and the amount of issues that they inherited as a result of being so wide open, which is really unfortunate, because I think that's one of also like KDE's best feature, is being so wide open and allows contributions for practically anything from anybody. I love it as a community project. And I'm really looking forward to like Plasma 8 when they finally get the unified theming system together. And I think that will maybe bump it up to like a B tier. But for me, I think the overall usability, despite how impressive it is overall, I think it's still close to a D tier.
Okay. Nate, go ahead.
So I am going to agree that it's a C tier, just for the simple fact that like Cosmic and Hyperland, if you look at those two, technically I still consider them alpha. They're not really full released yet, and they're doing so. There's going to be issues that's there. How long have people been complaining about issues with Plasma? Since
Forever.
Plasma 5, since Plasma 4, since like it's just constant, and they add new features and it's great, but they need to stop and somebody made the argument that Hyperland needs to slow down. Plasma needs to slow down and take the time and just fix the bugs. If they can do that, I would jump them up to S tier, 100%. But until then, I'm not even going to bother with it. It's going to be a C.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in front of you, Des, for just a second. I agree with you, Nate. My problem with Plasma isn't that it has bugs. Like, this is a huge, humongous project, right? The scope of KDE isn't the problem. The scope, the number of lines of code, the bugs themselves aren't the problem. The problem is their unwillingness to understand that there are bugs. Like that's not even really fair, because they know that there are bugs, obviously, but their unwillingness to do anything drastic about it. Like it feels like they don't understand the scope of the problems that they face. So they think that they can handle it just by having a whole bunch of bug raids where they, a whole bunch of developers get together and just squash a whole bunch of bugs, or they have those 15-minute bug sessions or whatever they do, right? So every week they come out with these blog posts like, oh, look, all these bugs we squashed. Like, that's great. And I like that it feels like they're trying, but their inability to realize that those little things are just taking small bites out of a humongous problem, and they're very unwilling to acknowledge that. And I think that's why I would rank them probably a C tier as well, simply because they feel delusional in that they're a little, like I said, unwilling to admit that they have a problem when it comes to the amount of bugs that they have, and they don't want to do anything to fix it. They just think that they can carry on as they always have and it will be fine. But eventually, the amount of bugs you have makes it harder for you to continually, update your project, right? It's going to topple over eventually and just there's going to be some kind of major bug, and it's going to be such a huge project that, they're going to have a hard time finding it or whatever, and it's going to lead to disaster. So we'll see how that goes. Desk, why don't you go ahead?
I'm going with A tier because its positives are it's got a lot of GUI configurability, and usually for new users it looks like Windows, which can be good in that case for new users. I don't need it to look like Windows in my case, but a lot of new users do. But then the configurability is also its downfall, because it's got so many options and so many bugs that, I think they need to fix them as well. So that's why I'm placing it in A.
Okay, Steve, go ahead.
I'm just gonna be quick about it. If you're looking at it this way, yes, it could be it has a potential to be A tier. But right now, as it is, when users first install it, especially if they install it on Arch via the Arch install, they're in for a rough ride. Very rough ride. That's the reason why I created my Arch install script, my KDE install script. But it has a potential to be an A tier or even S tier if they stop ignoring bug reports. But we all know that they're never going to do that, so they're never going to be an S tier. But A tier, yes. But for now, as it is, it can be stable if you don't install much and if you don't theme it much. And that's not a KDE problem, it's more of a theme developer problem, because they don't update their themes very often. They just make it compatible with what recently happened with Plasma 6. They made their themes compatible with Plasma 6 without fixing any bugs. They just made it work on Plasma 6 and they didn't take care of all the bugs. But if you use it as is with the Breeze theme and everything, yes, it can be stable. But that's not the way Plasma is advertised. Plasma is advertised as a themable desktop environment, customizable desktop environment that you can shape however you wish. And by doing that and suffering issues, it's more B or C tier for me. It's even though I love it so much and I fix as much as I can with Zero Linux. Like recently, I fixed the notification thing. But I fixed it on the lay-in theme. I didn't fix it in KDE because it's not broken on Breeze. It's broken whenever you use third-party themes. And that's not KDE's fault, as I said, but it's got bugs in a lot of places, and when you compound them one above the other, you're happy at first and as soon as you start customizing it, you start wanting to pull your hair off. So it's a wonderful desktop environment. I will forever be an ambassador of KDE, but yeah, I gotta admit the truth. Sometimes I cannot keep saying it is the best, it is the best, it is the best, because people will call me delusional. I'm not delusional. I am aware of the issues. I just when you are an ambassador of something and you like something with all your heart, you advertise it in a good light. You don't advertise it in a bad light.
Okay, Nate, go ahead.
I'll even be quicker than Steve. I broke Plasma on Debian. Enough said.
Okay. Anybody have any other arguments about Plasma, or are we gonna call the vote? I have no idea what your name is. QY9, go ahead.
So I really like KDE Plasma. I think it's an awesome desktop. I never had any issues. I personally even donated to KDE because I just like the desktop, and I just wanted to address my love to the desktop that I use every day, and that's about it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Drew, call the vote.
Okay, this is exactly what I thought was going to happen. It's incredibly polarizing. We have 2 in S, 3 in A, 1 B, 3 in C, and 2 in D. So the 2 3s are A and C, and the two, it's really, really polarizing.
So Matt gets to call.
Matt, you have the con.
Well, I voted for C earlier, so I think that's where I will put it as a C tier, but that feels so low.
You know what though? I didn't actually participate in this particular discussion. I think everyone knows I have feelings about KDE. But it's one of those things. I worked in software for a while, not as a developer, but I've worked closely with the development team. And the software that we were providing was about 2 million lines of code. And that's what KDE feels like to me, because it could be done in probably 1/10 of the code. But that's just my feeling on it. It just feels bloated. So there you go.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and break the tie as a C. Well, you know what? Yeah, we'll just leave it there. C tier for KDE. That's gonna piss everyone off because the YouTube chat seems to think that it's S tier. That's S tier 1 in the YouTube chat. Okay, who wants to nominate the next one? Des, go ahead.
Cinnamon.
Cinnamon. Okay. Do you want to tell us why or where you think Cinnamon should go while I go searching for a Cinnamon logo?
B, believe it or not A. And the reason I put it in B, however, is because it does configurability good, but its major weakness is that on other distros besides Mint, it doesn't look as good. And you can make it look good, I'm sure, but you have to click a lot of buttons and do a lot of work to do it.
Riggs, go ahead.
I've not seen Cinnamon outside of Mint, so I'm not sure how it looks on other distros, but I think it fits its target audience for Mint as a kind of just works, everything's simple, nicely laid out. So I given where everything else is, I'm thinking B. But it's if you want something simple, it's great. But I've not seen what it's like on other distros, so.
Okay, Nate.
I'm going to give it an A tier, and it mostly just because when it comes to me, I also have to factor in stability, and the fact that to a lot of people that are installing Linux for the first time, there's such familiarities with Windows, and it's very stable. I'm going to put it at A tier. If I was going to be a slight jerk, I might put it at C. Just because to me it is ugly, but still.
RBM, go ahead.
Okay, I'm currently holding my vote because I think I will be easily swayed on this one. But I personally think that Cinnamon is for me, it's the number one recommendation that I make for people to use when they make the move to Linux. And I make that recommendation whether you're a Mac user or a Windows user, or if you're just a mobile phone user who doesn't really have a computer at all. I think Mint I don't love it for myself, because I am an elitist, but that's not supposed to be part of the ranking here.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's okay. I try not to be a rude elitist, but I don't think that I do a very good job of that.
I too am an elitist, so I shouldn't have been throwing stones.
Yeah. But I do think that as far as the usability of Cinnamon goes, I think they nailed it. I think they did a good job. And I don't think users can easily get lost in Cinnamon. I think there's just enough for them to tinker with and toggle. And there's just enough customization for a new user to get started, and for somebody to get cozy and comfortable and live in Cinnamon for years and never care about anything else. I think they nailed that. I don't love it for myself, but I think usability goes, like, it's really might be an A tier, but I struggle to give full desktop environments really high rankings because, I'm an elitist and all.
Right. Okay. D-Dubs, go ahead. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Yep. I just had to move. I'm going to say I have to agree, basically, that I think Cinnamon for a desktop environment has all the key features that you want. It's very straightforward. It's fairly logical. It's fairly consistent. It is themable. There are plenty of utilities for it. I hadn't used it in a long time, and then just recently I tried it, and I was actually fairly happy with it. And then I've tried 6.4, the beta with Wayland, and that was even better. I was like, so I'm going to give it an A. I'm the same way. I don't really like desktop environments, but it's kind of won me over as far as a really good starter OS. And I would do the same thing if I was going to recommend a Windows user. That's probably what I would push them to is a Mint Cinnamon config.
Okay. Steve?
Yeah. When it comes to desktop environments, Cinnamon holds for me holds the award for simplest desktop environment to use, next to which is XFCE. But the Cinnamon is very straightforward, very opinionated when it comes to stability, and they don't add too much without taking too much away. You can still make it look damn sexy if you put your mind to it. They don't take that ability away from you. People think that Cinnamon is very uncustomizable. On the contrary, I've seen people turn XFCE better looking than KDE sometimes, because they put their mind to it. It's straightforward. It doesn't give you, it doesn't open too many doors for you to break it. It's almost impossible to break it, in my mind, because even when I used it, and you know me, I'm a tinker, I almost break anything. I rarely was able to break Cinnamon. Even if you use badly created themes, you just click on another one, you can switch and stability is back, and especially when you use it on Debian. If you use it on Arch, that's a different story, because Arch itself is a buggy mess. But if you use it as shipped on Debian, I'm like, especially LMDE, Linux Mint Debian Edition, Cinnamon, perfect combo. I would install it to any beginner user or grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, easy. It's I give it an A tier. Simple.
Okay. Parking meter, go ahead.
Yeah. So Cinnamon, my comments on it are kind of echo some things I've heard before, but like what it did for me was simplify my life. I was tired of my, aging mother, getting caught in spam, situations, installing viruses. And so to simplify my world, I put Mint on her laptop. And of course, I customized it for a passwordless world and things like that. But like Cinnamon required no maintenance, no issues, no bugs. She was able to figure it out, and use it with no knowledge that she wasn't in a Windows world anymore. So to me, like it, had earned a special place in my heart, and I'm going to give it an A.
Okay, Nate.
I'm gonna make another argument for A tier. Yes, I know the Mint team is based off of Ubuntu, but they ripped out every bit of snaps, and I am forever grateful.
Sounds more like a argument for Mint than Cinnamon, but okay. Cinnamon is a useless distro. Sorry, just had to put that out there.
Without that team, we wouldn't have Cinnamon. So
Oh,
I'm
good
going to
point.
give them credit.
All right, good point. I just had to troll him because it's my job. RBM, go ahead. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. There were some mentions about the stability overall of Mint as well that I wanted to pile on about a little bit. That's something that I've also found to be true for Mint in a way that I don't want to invite direct comparisons because that's not the point of this. But GNOME has also marketed in recent years as trying to be very, very stable, but I think they have not succeeded in that very well at all. There's been a lot of really weird broken stuff, and they keep intentionally breaking things that they don't agree should be in the desktop environment or whatever. But Mint, however, not Mint, but the Mint team behind Cinnamon, I mean, they've stuck to the guns, and they've said we're gonna keep it stable and we're gonna keep everything familiar, and we're not gonna change how you operate, and we're not gonna force a new paradigm on you. We're just gonna give you what we've got, and it's gonna be that way forever. And we hope you like it, and you hope you get comfortable and cozy with it. And I think that's been also a really big thing for Cinnamon and its usability and stability.
Okay, D-Dubs?
Yeah, just to add a slightly fine point to what Steve was saying, I think their purpose and their focus isn't on this maxi customizable kind of thing. It's a comfortable, working, consistent environment. And most people, guys at work, didn't even know you could have a dark mode for Windows, They don't change a lot of the things that those of us who like to really personalize our OS do. Again, I think its focus is simplicity and functionality, but you can still customize the heck out of it without a whole lot of work. I mean, I go to Hyperland, you want to put the WABAR on the bottom, you got to go edit a JSON file. In Cinnamon, I just right mouse, move over the bar, and move the mouse where I want that bar to be. Oh, I want a second bar, same thing. Oh, look, add new panel, So these kinds of very simple features that don't require a lot of expertise, I think, are what give it the A tier.
Okay. Steve, go ahead.
I just wanted to agree 100% with what he said. So nothing else to add. Their main purpose is stability, and then without taking away the ability to customize to your heart's content. But they don't concentrate on customization. They concentrate on stability and ease of use, and they add on the bonuses without giving you too much, so you can break your system. So stability is what they aim for, and I agree 100%.
Okay, Drew?
I'm all over the place with this. Honestly, I mean, if I agree with the people that say if I was to recommend something to a newer user, I would go with cinnamon. And I tend to agree with that. There are certain things that I don't like about the customization. Like, I'm not a fan of the cinnamon spices. You know what I'm saying? And then as far as like performance, I'll give it, good, a good. The fact that they're kind of lagging in terms of Wayland support a little bit bothers me. And going forward and getting people on to recommend cinnamon to newer people, I would say that's a little bit of a deterrent. But the truth of the matter is, I think the user experience is very good. And if I'm coming from a Windows environment, I don't see a better alternative, especially with what I would consider limited customization compared to something like KDE.
Okay, just I had something to say, but I forgot what it was. So, Riggs, go ahead.
I think the quick summary on cinnamon is that like it depends who you're looking at it for. Like for a lot of us, it's probably say at best for its target audience, it's an A. And it depends on what perspective you're looking at it from. If you're taking into account like who it's made for, it's going to end up higher rated than if you take it into account of like how we would look at it. So like yeah, it's missing some features, but for the people who it's for, they don't care. It's something that just works for them.
Nate.
I actually want to. So, yes, I agree that Wayland could be an issue, but that's mostly for people like us that are constantly doing testing things and tweaking our systems. As far as I like the approach that they're taking, because I'm just gonna be honest, Wayland is still not ready. It's not 100%. It's up there. Like, I'd probably give it a solid 80. If you have a NVIDIA card, I'll give you a solid 51. But at the same point, I like the fact that they are holding back, and I like the fact that XFCE is kind of the same way. They're both holding back and trying to make sure that whenever they do switch, it is 100% ready. And I think, to their credit, that's actually a good thing, because it brings stability that they know is going to work.
Okay, D-Dubs, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, Cinnamon's already in beta for Wayland, and it works. I was actually been kind of impressed. So, I mean, it's there. They recognize that it's a future. And I will say, with the recent NVIDIA drivers, they're neat. Wayland support is a lot more than what you give it, especially depending on the distro.
I find it, what I was going to say when Drew mentioned Wayland for the first time was that it felt odd to me that Pantheon actually got Wayland support before Mint did, just because it's so underdeveloped. Nerdgasm, go ahead. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
I think it's a great point that Cinnamon has Wayland in the beta, and that it appears to be fine from that test. So that's really great. I want to push back on like Wayland not being super important right now, just because there are multiple distributions that have all like major distributions already pushed Wayland as the default now. So whether or not it's ready, and like I don't want to put into the conversation whether or not it's ready, because it's a mixed bag. Obviously, whether or not it's ready, it's here in a lot of senses. And if you were to, if the part of the conversation is setting up a new user with something, you want to set them up with something that is going to just continue working for a long while. And if you're setting them up on Xorg and then Xorg is going away, that's just going to create a problem slightly down the line. I do acknowledge, though, that problems in Wayland could create a problem potentially sooner. I just kind of wanted to throw that nugget out there.
Okay, Nate, take us home.
If we can call it Green Ubuntu, would you make it an A tier, Matt?
No.
All right, never mind. Well, my argument is I was actually going to say when it comes to Wayland, it's not the fact that I don't think Wayland is the main thing that we're moving to. That's just going to happen. I mean, y'all know me. I'm System 76 has me on their bankroll. But anyways, and Cosmic is a thing. But at the same time, I think that if I was going to put a new user on it, yes, I know that it would move to Wayland, but at the same time, for stability wise, right now, I would still keep them on X11 just because Cinnamon is so familiar. It's stable. It's great. It doesn't change that much. They can do a little bit of tweaks. It's fine. And really for, several more years, it's going to be okay. And when they get a new laptop or whatever, just put the Wayland version.
Okay, Drew, what's call the vote?
It's a tie between A and B.
I should have made you break the votes, man. When you got all the hate mail.
Yeah.
The chat's still going on about me putting Plasma in C.
No, I get that.
All right. Yeah. The perils of being the boss. All right. So we're gonna let the YouTube chat break the vote this time because they voted for A. So that's what we'll put it in is A. A tier for Cinnamon. Okay.
Yeah, agree Ubuntu.
Yeah. All right. So who wants to nominate the next one? Nate, go ahead.
I'm gonna hate myself. Let's just get GNOME out of the way.
Get GNOME out of the way. That's what the GNOME guys like to hear. Riggs, go ahead.
Can we give this its own tier below D? That's all I've got to say.
That'll make the KDE guys feel better. D-Dubs, go ahead.
Is there an F category? Oh boy. Okay, let's talk about the good thing of GNOME. If you leave it alone, it's very stable. It's very mobile centric kind of. A lot of people find it very easy just to switch to it, because it's like it works almost like their phone does. So I'm going to go with a C. I think it really should deserve better than that, but their implementation, as soon as you try to customize it and add extensions, it just falls over. Now, there was a project I looked at, Oma Club, which he went through a ridiculous amount of work to just really make it a wonderful interface. But I'm sitting there going, who really wants to do that much work? So I'm going to give it a C.
Okay, Nate?
Chat's gonna be mad at me, but I'm gonna give 100% a D. And yes, it is stable until you try to do anything with it as far as customization. My other issue is I cannot stand the GNOME Foundation, and I know that we're not really basing it upon who's behind the distro, but if we gave the Plasma people talked about them, then I'm going to talk about the GNOME Foundation. I cannot stand them. They are the biggest jerks I've ever met in my life, to be honest. And I'm not saying all of them are. I'm just saying the ones that I have personally talked to. And I can't get behind their whole philosophy of just completely ignoring what people would like. They could make it so much better if they would just listen to a few people in the community instead of just taking whatever and running with it and saying, no, we're going to do it our way. I don't like that attitude. To me, that's another Microsoft attitude, and I don't have any use for it.
Okay. Steve, go ahead.
Is that a Z tier anywhere? No. Serious talk. People are gonna hate me. Really gonna hate me. They're gonna kill me. Prepare your access, people. But I would give it either a B or an A. Okay, mentality behind it is shit, but we're not rating desktop environments based on the people behind it. I just give it a B or an A. I'm more leaning towards B because when it comes to stability, and if you follow the reasoning behind it. So don't customize it, use it as is, and call it a day. It's perfectly stable. It's more stable than KDE. If you put KDE next to it, it's more stable. GNOME is more stable. Just don't mess with it. Just use it as is. And there's a reason why Red Hat chose it as the workstation DE. So I give it a B tier because the only points I dock for it is, it's Apple, it's Mac OS on Linux. But other than that, if you use it as it was intended to be used, ignoring the fact that the developers behind it are some of the worst people you can ever meet, not all of them again, like Nate said, but most of them, as a desktop environment, it's simple to use. Doesn't break on you if you don't mess with it. But since we are Linux users and nerds, some of us here, if not all of us here, are nerds. We want to mess with it. We want to customize it. Yeah, this is where it falls on its face. That's 100% true. But not everyone is a nerd. So if people just want something that gets out of your way, but is extremely limited, and they don't care about the limits, they just want to use it, it's a B tier.
Okay. Des, go ahead.
I'm kind of split on this one. So A, but only if it's like a tablet or some kind of phone that runs Linux or something like that you can touch on as well as use a keyboard. Otherwise, I'm gonna put it at a D in that case, because if you're only using a keyboard and mouse or something like that, it's pretty horrible the way you use it. And customizability as well. Compared to some of the others like KDE and Cinnamon. But because it does something unique when it comes to mobile type devices with touch screens and stuff, I would go ahead and put it at A and give it the benefit of the doubt.
Okay. Riggs, go ahead.
I think it's entirely fair to talk about the people behind it if their stubbornness directly affects the product, which in this case it does. I thought GNOME was great when I first switched to Linux and didn't know there were any alternatives, and since that day it has been steadily going down. It's GNOME tier. That's it.
Okay. Nerdgasm, go ahead.
Yeah, I've had mixed feelings about GNOME for a long time. I was definitely a GNOME 2 user back in the day, and had GNOME 3 and further has had a lot of changes and stuff over time. But I would agree with a lot of people who say, hey, if you don't mess with it, it just works, and that's the case for a lot of them. That's very much a great thing to consider. That gives it quite a few points for sure. But like it has the ability for the extensions, and to just kind of exclude that when trying to make the rating, I don't feel is a very accurate or good thing to do. And the fact that extensions tend to just break every major update, which is fairly often, it's kind of a tough thing. But I really don't like the use of space and the and some of the customization restrictions. It just it felt like in a lot of ways GNOME went backwards on some of that from how it used to be way back in the day when I started using Linux as just a plaything. And I don't know, but if I'm looking at everything else that has been rated and I'm taking what I've said into account, I'm gonna have to put it at a C.
Okay, Nate.
So I was going to add more to the fact that I am currently technically using GNOME, even though it has like the pop shell built on top of it. And I can't get behind the fact that it's usable, because to me, I had to install Pop! OS just to make GNOME usable for me. And on top of that, it is stable as long as you don't really mess with it. But at the same time, I look at other distros like Cinnamon and XFCE that you can customize it and still be stable. So I don't really fully get that argument, and that's the reason why I'd like to stick it in the C tier, but I can't, even though C are technically winning. But it's just still a D for me, because just the fact that they just completely ignore anything about the community, and I feel like they just hate us.
Okay.
I know that's not true, but just what I feel.
Right. You're not the only one that feels that way. All right. So before I let anybody else go, I got to put my 2 cents in here, because I hate every single one of you who've talked so far, because you're putting me in the position of defending GNOME, and I don't want to be in that position. I do not like GNOME at all. Everybody knows that. I'm very outspoken in my dislike of that desktop environment, but we ranked DWM as A tier. So I'm going to pick on you for a minute, Nate, because of what you just said, because you're the most recent one. That you had to add Pop Shell onto GNOME to make it usable. Well, DWM is unusable in its vanilla form. We ranked it in A, right? You have to make DWM into your own thing. That's basically GNOME extensions are DWM patches. And that's just, I mean, that's the way I look at it, at least. And well, yes, patches break DWM all the time. GNOME extensions break GNOME all the time. Patches break with every single DWM release when there is one. Now, granted, it releases a lot slower, so it's not as big of a deal. But I think that that's the way that I look at it in that regard. But also, when people argue against GNOME, and I've done the exact same thing, is that a lot of people argue on it based on a perception that they have from other people. They don't necessarily based on it from their own experiences actually using it, but also if they have used it, they don't use it in the way that it was intended to be used. And that's the most dumb thing ever to say, but you have to look at it from the GNOME developers, perspective. They have crafted an experience that has to be used in a certain way, and whether or not you agree with that or not is up to you, and 100% reasonable to argue against. Like, if you don't like the way macOS works, you're just not going to use macOS. macOS isn't customizable. It works the way macOS does. GNOME is the same thing. Steve said it earlier. This is basically the Apple way of doing things. It's the GNOME Foundation's way, or the highway. And that's the way. And like I said, if you disagree with that, that's fine. I disagree with it. But GNOME sets out to do things the way they want it to be done, and that appeals to a lot of people. Being able to just install something and use it and have the ability to add on top of it with extensions is good, but it's usable in its vanilla form. And I think that that's I think that there's a lot to be said for that. Also, there's a reason, guys, why every distro on the planet, outside of a rare few, use GNOME as their default. It's not because they don't like KDE. Like, KDE would be way easier for a lot of these distros because it would allow them to customize it and make it look like their own. But it's just so less cumbersome than Plasma because of, there's not as many packages to maintain there. And while there are a lot of like add-on applications, but you don't have to include all those things. So I think that despite the fact that I don't care for GNOME, it gets a bad rap. So I would say it's at least an A tier, and that's just my opinion. So RBM, go ahead. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Okay. Yeah, I was on the wrong desktop. Sorry. GNOME, I hate it. Okay, like, let's just be straightforward here. I hate it. I don't like it. It doesn't feel good to use. I don't appreciate almost any of the design decisions that they make. I have a chip on my shoulder about it, but every distribution ships GNOME by default. So I use it because it's there, and most of these systems I will use them for maybe 10 minutes a day or even 10 minutes a week. They're not for me to do any like work or productivity on. I think GNOME sucks at that. So I can't give it better than a C tier. And the only reason that I can even give it a C tier is because I think that they accidentally made it at least, if you get used to using it, very good for laptops with touchpads. I don't like it, but I think it does work a lot better than, well, any of the other ones that I've tried with a touchpad on a laptop with a single screen. I think they nailed what they were going for. I just don't like how it feels. So it's a C for me.
Okay. QI9, go ahead.
Thank you. My experience with GNOME was fast. Well, since it was the default on Debian, when I got to try it, I first I got it. It was all fine. Then I wanted to create a text file on my desktop, and I couldn't. So that was a -1 point instantly for me because, of course, I came with expectations, and when they're not there, I get disappointed. Well, and then I figured out that to get my applications, I need to click twice instead of having it available directly somewhere. And then the iPad feeling is definitely there, which when you expect a desktop, again that would be another disappointment. So it instantly felt like all the downsides of Linux with Mac OS looking, but not exactly. And that combo was just horrible. I couldn't bear it. And so that was 30 minutes of instant regret and looking at Cinnamon, Katie, and everything else, yada yada. Yeah, so my experience with GNOME was bad. I don't know about I don't know about the people who make it, etc. Why it's default and whatnot, but yeah, it was just pure disappointment for me, at least. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Riggs, go ahead.
Just a really quick one because I've got to run downstairs for a food order. We currently have a desktop environment in A, B, and C. Compare GNOME to each of them. That's my last argument for it being in D, because Cinnamon, I'd say that's better. KDE, better. I would even say in its current alpha state, Cosmic is better than just GNOME as it is. So there's my final argument before I run to get food.
Okay. Anybody else have an argument, or are we going to call the vote? All right, Drew, call the vote.
A was 4, C was 5, and D was 4. So
C is
C1.
And that's what won on YouTube as well. So okay, so C it is. All right, so I'm going to nominate the next one. BSPWM is the next nominee for thing, and I have opinions on this one. I think that this is an A tier for sure. Like it can't be anything else. It's not quite S tier because of the way it does workspaces, but it's a really good window manager. So I think that A is where it should go. So who has arguments for BSPWM? Or am I just going to win? RBM, go ahead.
All right, I can give you a couple of points here because being a tiling window manager, elitist and all, I do very much. I'm never going to live that down. I do appreciate so much about the architecture and design of BSPWM. And if you're a window manager or a tiling window manager aficionado, I think there's a lot to appreciate and enjoy about BSPWM. It definitely struggles with some aspects. It's like Bash is kind of like the default go-to for configuring it, but it's technically configurable in any language, right? Because it also is more or less based on like a configuration management tool that like a controller, I don't remember what it was called either, BSPC or something.
Yep, that's what Drew tells us.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you can kind of get there with anything, right? But it's not super well like demonstrated anywhere, so that's kind of a bummer. The workspaces are a little weird, but I'm not sure that any place or any window manager gets workspaces and tags exactly right. But it is one of the pioneers of the dwindling, like golden ratio style tiling, automatic tiling, isn't it? If I remember right.
Probably.
And I think that was a good paradigm to get introduced to people, to allow nice, like automatic tiling that you didn't have to like do finger gymnastics and acrobatics to get your windows arranged, just so that you didn't have to pick up a mouse to do it. I think that was pretty nice. So I think I can give it I would like to give it an A tier, but I'm not experienced enough with it to say strongly on A or B. I would probably go with A in general, but I could be convinced for a B.
Okay. So there's one downside to BSPWM in that it feels very much abandoned or complete. I suppose is the way they probably look at it. It's just a complete thing. They're no longer adding stuff to it, and there's no plan to take it to Wayland or anything like that. So the future for BSPWM, I don't know, is bright, but as is, it's really good. And someone mentioned in the chat as well about SXHKD. I love that paradigm. I love that it doesn't include the ability to do key binding on its own. I think that every window manager should do that. It makes your key binding super portable. It also means you don't have to learn horrendous syntax to do your key bindings like you do in almost everything. Almost every window manager has some kind of syntax in order to get it right. Some of them obviously way worse than others. So I really like SXHKD despite the horrendous name. I think that's a top point for it. So D-Dubs, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you on that part of it for sure. The SXHVD or whatever. I will say a funny compliment to it is something that Vaxry of Hyperland once said. He started with i3. We got very frustrated. That's what made him want to make Hyperland. But he said what he didn't realize is it was already there. He just didn't know about BSPWM. So had he seen that, there would be no Hyperland today. I just thought that was kind of a funny thing. But it really points out to the strength of the features of BSPWM. It is very interesting. It's very different, but yeah, I think long term, I don't know what it's going to be, what its future is, which is sad.
Yeah, it's just going to be. It will live as long as Xorg is,
right.
On, right. Drew, go ahead.
I think most people know that I'm a BSPWM nut. That was the one window manager that I've used probably more than any other, by quite a bit actually. I love the modularity, kind of to Matt's point, using SXHKD. If you want a bar, you don't have to use a bar, but you can use polybar. I like the modularity of it. Its performance is unbelievable. Its configuration file, if you are a newer user, the configuration file, to me at least, is on par with one of the easiest ones to utilize. To your point also, though, the last time there was any type of commit to the project was well over a year ago. The fact that it is probably in its complete stages is very likely, which means there will be no Wayland support. But it also means that probably River was the extension of that project. I don't know enough about River to actually say that, but from what I understand, that is the case. BSPWM, though, is unbelievably good. Unbelievably good. And I'm putting it in S tier, and I don't really care what anybody else says.
That's good. RBM, go ahead.
Yeah, I have to agree about the future of BSPWM. I mean, it really doesn't need anything else, right? Like it does have everything that it's supposed to have, but you still want to see a lot of maintenance and upkeep going into the future. But I don't necessarily need it to start adopting new features or something. But I'm sure there are always going to be refinements that could be made. But I'm just not sure how interesting they are going to be to write those refinements going forward, because it's such a stable and like it's an old project now. It's been there forever. It's an OG. So I can't really hold that against it so much. But I would like to see more activity and something happen. But I don't know. I think it still probably deserves a pretty strong like high B or A tier anyway.
Okay, Nate.
I'm going to give it a solid A, just for the simple fact that when I was first getting into tiling, that was one of the first ones that I ever used, and the documentation on it is absolutely beautiful. Regardless if I was trying it with Debian or Ubuntu, which don't do it on Ubuntu, by the way, or Arch and even Gentoo, the documentation's there, and it was really easy for me to grasp it and actually use it. I would love to give it an S tier, but since they haven't done any commits, that's going to degrade them a little bit because there needs to be some updates to it, and I would really love to see it actually move into Wayland. So,
okay, D-Dubs, take us home.
Yeah, just to add something to what Drew was saying, River is very close. It has a very similar idea where there is no really the config syntax is running through a series of commands, sort of like what hyperctl will do. But it has that kind of paradigm, but I think it does some things a lot differently than BSPWM does.
Okay, RBM quickly.
Quickly, I do love the fact that you brought up River, because I run River all the time, and it's amazing because it's pretty much like a little bit like having BSPWM but Wayland native, and foremost. So, like, I have a lot of appreciation for BSPWM, and that's probably why I ended up on River for so long already.
Good. All right, Drew, call the vote, please.
It got an A.
Okay, good. All right, so what we're gonna do next is a little bit of a lightning round. I'm gonna call off nominations. I'll just throw out what's next, and we'll go around semi quickly. I want to finish in the next 20 or 30 minutes or so. We're running close to 2 hours already. So I will nominate the rest of them. We'll just go as quickly as possible and see what we can do. So I3 is next on the list. So arguments for where I3 should be. Steve?
I knew you were going to call I3. That's why I raised my hand.
Predictable.
Okay, I'm going to make you happy on that one. It's A tier. No arguments there. It's been good. It's been solid. No, nothing bad can be said about it. The only downside is it's only Xorg. Wayland version is in the works, but we're talking about the
it's called
old
Sway.
and
Yeah,
good one.
Sway is the I3 implementation.
Yeah. So I3 as in I3, solid. Nothing bad to say about it. So A tier.
Okay. Nerdgasm?
I'm fine with I3 in either A, B, or C. It is been incredibly stable when I've used it. It's incredibly efficient. It's not the hardest to use. Is if you've got some key bindings on as a desktop wallpaper or on something separate, and it's a lot of more manual configuration and some other stuff that tends to lower it down for me personally. But I'm not going to argue for any of the specific letters. A, B, or C would be fine for me. But whatever it is, just put Sway on the same tier. Simple as that.
Okay. RBM, go ahead.
Yeah, if we're just judging it based on being I3 and not sort of being Sway at the same time, I think that I would consider I3 to be effectively deprecated at this point. I don't know if I3 is trying to do its own actual Wayland itself, other than Sway, or letting Sway be its successor. But for as far as Xorg goes, yeah, it was incredible and really great to use. Not a big, super huge fan of the plain text syntax again, but still think it's like a big, strong, solid B.
Okay, before I let anybody else go, JRJ in the chat, they did not get rid of i3 gaps, they inhaled it. It's just part of regular i3 now, so it's not gone, it's just part of the main project. Because all that was special about i3 gaps was it had gaps, and now regular i3 has gaps, so they didn't get rid of it. D-Dubs, go ahead.
Yep, solid A. We'll keep it quick and simple.
Okay. Nate?
It made Arch really usable for me, so I'm going to give it a solid A.
Okay. And Drew?
Yeah, I'm going to give it an A as well. I think it has really good configuration file. By the way, in terms of it's still being updated. In fact, there was a new release 4.24 1 month ago.
Yeah, they're still working. Yeah, the guys behind it are still developing it. They're not getting rid of it, and I don't think that they care that Sway exists. I truly, honestly do believe that i3 will outlive Sway because it's just still more popular and people like it more. So I would not be surprised if Sway dies and just i3 will carry on forever. I don't know that they will ever do their own Wayland stuff, but yeah. All right, Drew, call the vote.
A.
Okay, excellent. Let's see. Nominating the next one. Let's go ahead and do Mate. Steve, go ahead.
Mate, D tier.
D tier.
Okay. A D tier simply because by default it's a dead project. To me, it's dead because you don't see updates for it very often. So yeah, and it takes a lot of work to get it to look usable because by default it looks horrendous, and you don't see a lot of people using it anyway. So yeah, D tier.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to say about Mate? Nate, go ahead.
Just for the simple fact that it's pretty stable, I'm just going to give it a B.
Okay. Are there still people out there who care about GNOME 2? I mean, it seemed like a big deal when GNOME 3 was atrociously slow and just absolutely the worst thing ever. And yeah, we obviously, given our conversation about GNOME, people still think GNOME is the worst thing ever, but nobody can deny that it's at least somewhat usable now, and it wasn't before. So I'm wondering if anybody actually cares about GNOME 2. RBM, go ahead.
I do have to agree that I think the GNOME 2 thing is I think we've kind of outlived that as far as like usability paradigms goes, user experiences are. I think Mate is going to have to evolve with that eventually, or definitely will continue to fade away. So I could give it a C generously, but it's probably a D.
Right, Nate.
I would make the argument that it depends on what you're doing, especially if you have like really older hardware. And I mean like really older hardware. I would kind of put it a little bit above XFCE just because there is sometimes it's a little bit less as far as resource wise, but most of the time if it is older hardware, I would put XFCE. That's why I can only give it as high as a B.
Okay. And Nerdgasm.
I think if you're going to the super older hardware, just because it's one of the only things that's lightweight enough to work there, you just got to go to a window manager instead. In my opinion, that's just how I feel. But yeah, I feel like the time for the GNOME 2 has long passed. It had a great place initially. Because GNOME 3 and some of the initial versions after that were just lacking the features that GNOME 2 had. It was such a major shift that it wasn't just the UI was different. There was buttons that just were no longer there. There was right-click options that no longer did anything. It was so crazy that there needed to be those sorts of things. the time has long passed. People's needs have changed. There's still a small market for Mate. It can do its thing. I'm not going to hate on it, but I feel like its market should be taken up by lightweight window managers instead at this point. Gonna give it a D. But if there was an F tier, I would not put it there. D, but I could see an argument for C.
Okay. Drew, call the vote.
You got a D. By the way, I installed GNOME Classic the other day on Debian just to see.
How did that go for you?
Well, I mean, that wasn't the only thing I installed on there, but I just wanted to see, what is GNOME Classic? I haven't used it in so long. I didn't realize it's kind of like GNOME 2, right? I mean, I didn't know any better, so I just wanted to see what it was.
All right, the next nominee is Qtile, and I'm putting this in S tier for me. So it's the best window manager ever, and I will accept no argument. Sorry, RBM. I'm just kidding. RBM, go ahead.
I find it difficult to argue against S tier unless you just don't like Python. I mean, there was definitely a time when Qtile was problematic to deal with, but I think some new shifts in just kind of the computing world have helped alleviate that. If you're able to get different kinds of installations of the thing to work, the whole like virtual env thing with Python and Qtile was always, it's getting easier to deal with at least. So I would give it an A, but I think everything is there to give it an S as well.
Okay, Steve, go ahead.
You said Qtile, huh?
Yeah, Qtile.
S tier. I have nothing to other than that to say except S tier.
Okay, Nate.
I had voted S tier, but I'm going to change it down to an A, just because you said that we couldn't make a voice. So I'm going to be pedantic.
I was joking. I let you speak.
No. On a serious note, though, like it actually is. I'm going to change it back to S because I do believe it's one of the best ones that's out there right now. It's current state as it is.
Yeah, and yeah, it has. I mean, everybody says stuff about i3 and BSPW not having Wayland. Qtile is like the only Xorg window manager that has a fully functioning, at least mostly functioning most of the time, Wayland version, and it's just. I think it's great. So, D-Dubs, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed one. Riggs, go ahead.
I was going to say yeah, because Qtile's great, but I don't think it's like so much better than anything else in the list that it should be the first thing that we put into S. And then you said the thing about Wayland, and now I'm taking it back. So yeah, I'll go S for Qtile.
Okay. Now D-Dubs.
I'm going to give it an A. The Wayland support, yeah, it's sort of good, sort of bad. It needs some work, but the only reason I'm giving it the A is because of Python. That is, to me, a lot of extra work to configure it, and it gets kind of frustrating when there's any kind of issue. But its functionality, its scalability, its themability is top notch.
It's good stuff. All right, Drew, go ahead.
So I am just going to be salty about it and say if DWM and BSPWM don't get an S, Qtile doesn't get an S. And but you know what? Here's the thing: it may in the next year. If it gets Wayland support over the next year, I have no problem putting it as an S tier, and most likely something that I would move to in the future.
So on the Wayland thing, if you just count the window manager parts of it, I think it's there, right? Because they've managed to cobble. I mean, it feels like they've cobbled together, but they've put together the window manager parts really well. It's the accessories that like Hyperland has that it falls down on that you kind of have to go to the third parties to get. So things like menus and stuff like that. It's still there. It doesn't have the ecosystem that Hyperland does. So, but from a stability standpoint, the Wayland version has gone from unusable a year ago to, I mean, it's usable now. It's not. I don't think it's as stable as Hyperland, but it's really, really close. Drew, go ahead.
The other part of it is a little bit more, it's not impossible, obviously, because I've done it, but installing it on Debian is not the easiest thing to do, especially with virtual environments and stuff. So it can be done. However, that's something that's a little bit lacking.
Yeah, because of the Python thing, it really does need the most recent version of Python. So it leaves those granddaddy distros out in their cold. Sorry, I can't help myself. All right, Drew, call the vote.
It got an A.
Got an A. Okay. All you guys, screw you. It's fine. I said at the beginning, no salty if your thing didn't go where you thought it should go, so that's fine. Go ahead, Drew.
What I was going to say is, if we don't give XFCE some love pretty soon, I'm going to burst.
I know it's kind of like, let's go ahead and do XFCE because we don't need to. We have a couple other ones we can go do, but we'll go fast. So, XFCE, Steve, you ring in first. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm just gonna put it in B tier.
Okay. You want to say anything else, or are you just done with that?
Done with that. There's nothing else to say.
Okay, RBM, go ahead.
XFCE for me is also a B tier. They need to work on their defaults. They need to get that Wayland session completed, and otherwise, I think it does. I think it does a better job of being KDE than KDE does.
Okay. Nate, go ahead.
No, for me, it's 100% a S tier. When it comes to an actual desktop environment, and I'm telling somebody that, hey, you want to use something super stable, I am 100% going to give them over Cinnamon, over GNOME, over KDE, over Cosmic, probably, and well, unless everything goes to Wayland. But until then, it's 100% XFCE, and I'm just going to stick with that because it's just rock solid. As a matter of fact, when it comes to Arch, that's the actual distro that I will or the actual desktop environment I'll come back to if Arch breaks itself.
Yeah. All right. Before I move on to the next person, someone in the chat was a little confused. The YouTube chat poll does not get actual votes in the final decision simply because I can't give you guys all the individual options. So the only polls that count are the ones that are in the Jitsi chat. So you guys get to vote, and we'll get to see who wins, but they don't actually count towards the final decision. That's the reason why there's some disparity there. Nerdgasm, go ahead.
I have loved XFCE for like most of my time with Linux, like over a decade. Like it's been XFCE has been fantastic. That said, I think I'm going to put it at a C at this time, just because of for one, the relation to the other things that are on here, and the main reason I loved XFCE for so long was it was incredibly lightweight while still being able to be quite beautiful in the way that it was customizable to look, and that still is holding true. It is incredibly stable. I like XFCE a lot. What it lacks to a degree is a little bit of cohesiveness, depending on exactly what all you're using. I feel like there's just more cohesiveness when it comes to a few other desktop environments, mainly the big ones, of course. But it's just hard for me to put it higher these days. A couple years ago, I would have put it a lot higher, but other desktop environments are just more lightweight than they used to be. GNOME and KDE, last I checked, use dramatically less RAM on a default layout than they did like 7 years ago. Things have gotten more efficient, and there's just actually not that huge of a difference in system usage from my testing a couple years ago, like 2 years ago, between KDE, GNOME, and XFCE. And so like I just can't quite bring myself to use XFCE when it looks a little bit worse, has less customization features and GUIs right in front of me that KDE does. I take offense with it being better at being KDE than KDE, just because KDE has all the frickin' options and they're just one layer under the surface. They're in a GUI for the most part. Like it's got that little bit more than XFCE does. It's more cohesive with how everything looks. Yeah, that's it. Love that XFCE. Voted C.
Okay, D-dubs.
Yep, I'm gonna give it an A. It kind of parallels what's been said. I think it's a very, very good desktop environment, but just not. I don't know what the future's going to be. I have a real tough time giving it an S. Sorry.
That's fine. I have a feeling that we won't be giving out an S, but we'll see. QY9, go ahead.
So XFCE is actually the first DE I got exposed to. It was on the university laptops, and it was there by default all the time. Impressions, well, it looks from 2010. I think they use it because it's kind of Windows-ish, and it's also lightweight. I think that's why the university had it. But either way, it didn't really fit my needs. I think what the previous person said is true. I prefer KDE over it for having some easier time dealing with it. The customizability wasn't as easy. Because I was trying to make it happen on my own. It was difficult. And also, one other thing would be Zorg. Don't like Zorg. They're on Zorg, and yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Okay. Nate, go ahead.
I just want to say about the lightweight comment. XFCE is still the lightest one. Just for the simple fact that when I installed it, I tried all 3 desktop environments, that's GNOME, KDE, and XFCE on Debian, and Debian has like a lot of packages missing right out of the box, just to be honest. And XFCE was still about, I would say probably about 200 megabytes lighter than KDE, and a full close to 500 megabytes lighter than GNOME, just out of the box. And so if you're one of those type of people, and I'm from the philosophy that if you're not using your RAM, it's wasted RAM. But at the same time, I also understand too that if I wanted to run multiple programs, XFCE still is lighter to me than any other desktop environment. And it's really that good. It is ugly at first unless you customize it. It can look good, but there is that too.
Yeah, the default skin of it is just not good. They need to change that, but yeah, I agree with you. All right, anybody else? Going once, twice. Drew, call the vote.
All right, I have to make an executive decision here because D-Dub said A when he was talking, yet voted for B. And so that actually skews it to B, but if D-Dubs chooses to put it in A wins.
Okay.
And I cannot have XFCE going in B. That's just bullshit, by the way. That's just bullshit.
Drew's gonna riot. RBM, go ahead.
I just wanted to briefly note that I know I said B the first time around, but as everybody spoke, I listened in and I changed my mind to A, and it's still losing by 1 vote.
All right, you can. By the way, I don't know if you guys can do this, but you can change your vote if you decide to do that in the poll.
Drew says, "Change it, or I'm
Change
banning
it
everybody."
or else.
Hold on, Drew. Hold on, Drew.
I changed it.
Oh, never mind.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. A wins, Matt.
It got S tier in the YouTube chat. That's funny. Okay.
That's not funny. That's exactly what it should be.
It's good stuff. All right, let's go ahead. Let's see what else. Let's make awesome our last one. Okay. Sorry, Sway. You guys are gonna have to live on the sidelines. So awesome window manager. Who has our arguments? Nate, go ahead.
Oh, I think RBM's before me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead, RBM.
It would have been okay. You could have gone ahead, Nate, but thank you. Awesome WM was the first tiler that I settled on. I did try several of them ahead of that, but like 15 years ago almost, I guess. Yeah, I landed on Awesome WM after going through all the hoops. Can't ever recommend Rat Poison, for example. That thing is not. Don't do that one. But yeah, Awesome WM was my first one, and it has a soft spot for it. But the Lua is an incredible language for it, and all the little like modules and everything that it supports is also incredible. It's kind of like, I think, where Hyperland might end up one day is to feel like the next generation Awesome WM. But I think it has to live. I don't think it can get up to A or S tier because I don't think it's ever going to make it to Wayland.
Okay. D-Dubs. Go ahead.
Yeah, just real quickly. I mean, I think everybody knows it's basically DWM with a different way to configure it and some features. So I'm going to put it at A since it's really on par with DWM. And to me, yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about Wayland and, you know, the need for it, and that's the future. But to me, just the what we've been describing is the benefits and features of these various interfaces. I don't think that's the biggest factor because, you know, say DWM is not going to get it itself. It's a new project. All these other ones tend to be new projects. Only a few are actually adding Wayland to their product. So I don't know. It's an A for me. That's it.
Okay, Nate, go ahead. Sorry, I got all the order out of whack.
Oh no, you're fine. I'm gonna be really quick. It's A for awesome, and it is actually very awesome. It's my art install that I have. I'm currently using the awesome window manager, and I don't really have any issues with it. I will say using the language is a little bit weird for me sometimes, but it's fine. It does great. I love it. So yeah, A.
Just go watch Drew's video. He'll explain it to you.
Actually, funny enough, I did.
Okay, Drew, call the vote.
I got an A.
Okay, we should just give everything an A. You guys are so unoriginal.
I know this was our last one, Matt, but I'd be curious to actually use like a non-tiling window manager to see how it stacks up against like GNOME, KDE, and so on. Like OpenBox or
Let's do
something.
OpenBox. Let's do it. We can do that. Put the poll up. All right, OpenBox is it. So you want to take the first opening argument?
Sure. OpenBox. I was about to do the poll, but
Sorry.
OpenBox is something that has not been touched in nearly a decade, close to, I know it's probably 9 years. So feature complete. But if I was to put a stacking window manager, just stacking window manager tier, it would be number one, flat out.
Okay. Anybody else have arguments for OpenBox to be where it should be? Anybody's okay? So anybody actually? Nate, go ahead.
Anybody use it?
That's what I was
I'm
gonna
sorry.
ask.
I'm gonna put it at C, just personally, because
Really?
it is a dead project to me.
So is BSPWM. So but yeah, the thing about OpenBox is you really have to like XML. I really like it. Nerdgasm, go ahead.
Just basic using it. Yeah, OpenBox is it served its purpose. But yeah, I've seen that it's feature complete, pretty much dead at this point. But still around somewhat. So I don't know. C, D. Either way is fine to me, really.
Okay. I'm gonna have to find an OpenBox logo. There we go. All right. So anybody else have anything to say, positive or negative, for OpenBox?
Oh. How lightweight is it compared to some of the tiling managers? Like, what's the difference there on resource usage? Anybody know?
It's really good. Just to jump in, I know that D-Dubs is actually doing some like research, or not. I don't know about research, but he was actually looking at resources fairly recently. Hopefully, I'm saying that correctly, but I think that OpenBox is one of those that you would be like shocked about how little resources are actually being used. So yeah, really stinking lightweight. And frankly, if you're looking at something in comparison, let's say Mate or something like that, it's going to be lower than that and probably a little bit more feature.
But like, what about like versus i3 or something? Like, what do we got?
It's not apples to apples with that. Sorry, I mean, because it's one's tiling and one's not. But I don't know. I like it.
It's light. It's fast. I mean, it's everything that Drew's been saying. I think when you add some of the other things to it, like the tint too, and some of the other things to try to dress it up and make it look pretty, that's when the resources get start to stack up.
Yeah, Nate.
I was gonna say it actually. If you're using when we was talking about older hardware, and I'm talking like really old hardware, it's actually pretty stinking lightweight, and it can use it even on a dual core, Core 2 Duo. It was still pretty lightweight.
RBM.
OpenBox is definitely great as far as a standalone window manager goes for Xorg, but like it is definitely a relic of its time, and it's never going to evolve. So if you want that out of it, it's probably like a real strong A, maybe even S tier for you. But if you intend to continue using it in the next 10 years, you may run out of hardware that it supports anymore. So I think it might be on the decline.
Okay, Drew, call to vote.
It gotta be, which puts it ahead of KDE and GNOME. That's all I cared about.
That's funny. All right. Okay, so obviously there are a lot of awesome things that we did not get to. We didn't do Sway, we didn't do Herbstloft, we didn't do Left WM, Budgie, Xmonad. We didn't get any of those. So, and we do have to call it a day because we're a little bit over. But anyways, that is it for this lug. We do this twice every single month. This month may be a little bit different. We'll figure out the second one eventually. But if you do want to join us, join the Discord. That's where you'll find the links and the times and dates and stuff for when that happens. So the link for the Discord, you can basically find that anywhere. It's not in the video description this time, of course, so I can't say that, but you can find it on my website. You can find it on the channel in some places. So join the Discord, find out all the information if you want to join us. You don't have to have a microphone or a camera set up in order to join the room. A lot of people here never said a word, which is perfectly fine. You're just a part of the group, and that's the way it works. Or you can also watch us live. I always stream this as well, so you can catch us on live, or you can watch it afterwards if you want to do that, which a lot of people will do. So that is it for this one. Thanks everybody for watching, everyone for participating. I'll stay in the room for a few minutes after I hit the end stream thing, but thanks everybody for watching us live. We had a really good time. Also, Qtile is S tier, and anybody who says differently is just wrong. So there you go. See you next time.